A billionaire's hand froze in midair as he reached for the eviction notice. Standing on the cracked front porch of a rundown duplex under the bright afternoon sun, he stared at the woman opening the weathered door. The folder slipped from his fingers, scattering papers across the faded wooden steps. The exhausted woman standing before him, wearing an old sweater dusted with flour from her bakery shift, was not just another struggling tenant. She was the wife he had loved, lost, and silently regretted every single day for the past 15 years. Neither of them spoke. The legal team behind him looked confused, the neighbors stopped watering their gardens, and time itself seemed to stand still. Before we uncover the heartbreaking truth behind this unforgettable reunion, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us that the greatest fortunes in life are never measured by money alone. Gideon Ashcroft had become one of the most successful real estate developers in the country. His name appeared in financial magazines beside billion-dollar acquisitions, luxury towers, and record-breaking investments. Television interviews praised his discipline, investors admired his instincts, and competitors respected the calm confidence that allowed him to transform neglected neighborhoods into thriving communities. To the outside world, Gideon seemed to possess everything people spent lifetimes chasing. He owned elegant homes overlooking peaceful lakes, traveled aboard private aircraft, and employed thousands of people across several companies. Yet every evening, after board meetings ended and congratulatory phone calls faded into silence, he returned to an enormous house that echoed with emptiness. The expensive furniture never comforted him. The awards displayed inside polished cabinets never answered him. Success had filled every bank account but left one place in his heart permanently vacant. Years earlier, long before anyone called him a billionaire, Gideon had shared a tiny apartment with the love of his life, Rosalind Mercer. She possessed a warm smile that made difficult days feel manageable and a gentle optimism that convinced him every setback carried the seed of a better tomorrow. They dreamed together while eating inexpensive dinners around a second-hand kitchen table. Gideon sketched business ideas on napkins while Rosalind baked bread for neighbors to earn extra income. They promised one another that if success ever arrived, kindness would remain more valuable than wealth. Then life became more complicated than either expected. Gideon's first construction company finally attracted major investors. Meetings multiplied. Deadlines expanded. Every opportunity demanded another sacrifice. He believed he worked tirelessly for their future, but Rosalind slowly watched the man she loved disappear behind endless ambition. Days without conversation became weeks. Important anniversaries were forgotten. Simple dinners together became cancelled appointments. She never wanted expensive gifts. She wanted the husband who once laughed beside her tiny kitchen. At the same time, Rosalind quietly struggled with several failed pregnancies, heartbreak she initially carried alone because Gideon always seemed overwhelmed by business pressures. The distance between them widened through misunderstandings neither intended to create. Eventually, after months of painful silence and exhausted conversations, they divorced with tears rather than anger. Neither remarried. Neither truly moved on. They simply learned how to survive separately. 15 years passed. Gideon's company recently purchased an aging residential block scheduled for redevelopment into affordable mixed-income housing. The project promised safer homes, modern facilities, and hundreds of new apartments, but the existing properties required legal relocation before construction could begin. Gideon usually left such matters to regional managers. This time, however, he insisted on personally reviewing several complicated cases involving long-term tenants facing financial hardship. He believed compassionate solutions mattered as much as profitable ones. On a warm autumn afternoon filled with golden sunlight, he arrived with a small legal team at one of the oldest duplexes scheduled for demolition. Records showed the tenant had fallen behind on rent after unexpected medical expenses and reduced working hours. The file listed the resident as Rosalind Mercer. The surname struck him immediately. His heartbeat quickened. Surely it could not be her. Then the front door slowly opened. There she stood. Time had added delicate silver strands to her chestnut hair and gentle lines around eyes that still reflected remarkable kindness despite obvious exhaustion. She looked thinner than he remembered, yet the quiet grace that first captured his heart remained untouched. Rosalind recognized him instantly. Neither expected the reunion. Neither had prepared for it. The legal assistants exchanged uncertain glances while Gideon silently bent to gather the scattered papers now resting across the porch. Rosalind invited everyone inside. The small apartment was simple but spotless. Fresh bread cooled on the kitchen counter beside carefully labeled containers destined for a local community cafe. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, filling the modest home with comforting warmth despite worn furniture and aging walls. Every object reflected careful maintenance rather than neglect. Gideon noticed framed children's drawings decorating one wall. Confused, he asked whether she had children. Rosalind smiled softly. She explained she volunteered every afternoon teaching baking classes to children from struggling families. The drawings were thank-you gifts from students whose confidence had grown through simple afternoons spent measuring flour, kneading dough, and believing in themselves. Gideon quietly looked around the room. Nothing suggested self-pity. Only quiet resilience. Reviewing her financial records later that afternoon, Gideon discovered another painful truth. Rosalind had fallen behind on rent because nearly all her savings had paid for medical treatment for her older sister following a devastating stroke. Insurance covered only part of the expenses. Rather than allowing debt to overwhelm her sister's family, Rosalind accepted additional bakery shifts and postponed her own needs. She had sacrificed stability to protect someone she loved. Just as she once sacrificed comfort to support Gideon's earliest dreams. That realization settled heavily upon him. He remembered countless mornings when Rosalind woke before sunrise to bake bread while encouraging him before difficult investor meetings. She had believed in him long before anyone else did. Yet somewhere along the journey toward success, he forgot to keep believing in the woman who first believed in him. Over the following days, Gideon quietly postponed the eviction review while searching through old storage boxes inside his home. There he found forgotten treasures. A faded recipe card covered with Rosalind's handwritten notes. Photographs from weekends spent renovating their first apartment together. A tiny notebook containing business ideas written during evenings when neither possessed enough money to purchase proper office supplies. Inside the notebook rested a folded letter. He had never opened it. It had slipped unnoticed between the pages years earlier. With trembling hands, he unfolded the carefully preserved paper. Rosalind had written it shortly before their divorce. She explained she never wanted him to choose between ambition and family. She only hoped success would never convince him that love could wait indefinitely. She ended the letter by writing that no achievement would ever make her stop wishing happiness for him. Tears blurred the words. For 15 years, Gideon believed their marriage ended because dreams pulled them apart. Now he realized silence had done the damage. The following afternoon, he returned alone. No lawyers. No executives. Only himself. Rosalind welcomed him politely. They spent hours talking beneath bright afternoon sunlight filtering through the kitchen windows. For the first time in years, neither interrupted the other. Gideon apologized without defending his past choices. He admitted that providing financially had become an excuse for neglecting emotional presence. Rosalind apologized for carrying grief alone instead of allowing vulnerability to replace quiet endurance. They spoke about dreams abandoned, children never born, holidays spent apart, and years neither could recover. Some wounds remained. Some tears still fell. Yet bitterness gradually surrendered to understanding. Gideon then shared unexpected news. The redevelopment project included plans for a new neighborhood bakery and community learning kitchen where local families could receive affordable meals, job training, and baking education. He asked Rosalind whether she would consider designing and leading the program. Not as charity. As the most qualified person he knew. She hesitated. Not because she doubted her ability. Because accepting meant trusting again. Weeks passed before she answered. During that time, Gideon ensured every resident facing relocation received respectful assistance, moving support, and housing options before construction began. He refused to allow financial efficiency to outweigh human dignity. Employees noticed the difference. Executives questioned the additional expenses. Gideon simply reminded them that buildings could always be replaced. Communities could not. Eventually Rosalind accepted the opportunity. The new bakery became far more than a business. Children learned practical skills after school. Single parents discovered employment opportunities. Retired neighbors volunteered beside teenagers. Fresh bread filled the neighborhood each afternoon while conversations restored connections that modern life often overlooked. The little learning kitchen slowly became the heart of the entire redevelopment project. Months later, during the community's grand opening celebration beneath clear blue skies, Gideon publicly acknowledged someone rarely mentioned in stories about his success. He admitted that every newspaper calling him self-made overlooked the woman who once believed in impossible dreams before investors, bankers, or shareholders ever did. Without Rosalind's encouragement during those uncertain years, he confessed, no company would have existed. The audience responded with heartfelt applause directed not toward the billionaire but toward the humble baker quietly wiping flour from her hands. Life did not magically erase every painful memory. Healing arrived gradually through honesty, patience, and consistent kindness rather than dramatic promises. Gideon and Rosalind spent more afternoons together discussing recipes, mentoring young entrepreneurs, and helping families rebuild their lives. They laughed more easily. They listened more carefully. The friendship they rebuilt rested upon stronger foundations than the marriage they had once lost. One bright spring afternoon, Gideon walked into the community bakery carrying the old recipe card he had discovered among forgotten boxes. Rosalind smiled the moment she recognized it. Together they baked the same loaf of bread they used to make in their tiny apartment decades earlier. The familiar aroma filled the kitchen, and volunteers quietly watched as two people once separated by silence now worked side by side with gentle understanding. Neither spoke about the past. They no longer needed to. Their actions answered every question words once failed to express. Visitors often asked Gideon what his greatest investment had been. Some expected him to mention skyscrapers, shopping centers, or international developments. Instead, he always smiled toward the bakery windows where children laughed while kneading dough beside Rosalind. He answered that the greatest investment of his life was learning that relationships required daily attention, because neglected hearts eventually become debts no amount of money can repay. Before this story reaches its conclusion, we would love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing whether you believe true forgiveness is possible after years of separation and regret, because your words might encourage someone to take the first step toward healing a relationship they thought was lost forever. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that success means very little if it costs the people who believed in us first, and that sometimes the richest life begins not when we earn another fortune, but when we finally find the courage to return home with humility, gratitude, and love.